Have you ever tried convincing a friend on something that they believe are actually false, but only for them to argue even harder? Or maybe, have you experienced rejecting facts that did not align with your own views? These moments are common, but why does it happen? So today we are exploring a new title. Students naturally receive new information that challenges their beliefs. In this debate, we will study why knowledge resistance occurs, how it impacts students' learning, and whether it's something we can or should change. Let's have our first speaker to present their ideas.
Students have confirmation bias for what they originally believed in. Resisting new information can be due to their confirmation bias, which is a common cognitive tendency among students. Students often feel more confident when they seek out information that supports their pre-existing beliefs and reject opposing views that challenge those beliefs. Even when presented with strong counter-arguments, students may rationalize or dismiss them to preserve their original stance. This behavior reflects the resistance that is inbuilt in students when encountering new ideas or perspectives, just because it is contradictory to what they have originally fixated on and threatens their mental comfort zone. For instance, if someone tells a health-conscious student that the nutritional factor between organic and non-organic food has barely any difference, the student still may be inclined towards organic food because it is what the student perceives. A study in philosophy of science states that students who have a moderate level of confirmation bias tend to feel more confident when making decisions. However, this closes them off from seeking alternative viewpoints and creates a restricted and conservative mind against diverse perspectives.
Actually, students can use new information to their advantage, as knowledge shouldn't be limited to any individual whatsoever in their growth. Able to learn different individuals' cultural backgrounds and traditions, other individuals like mostly students, able to have an open mind and use this to their advantage in their livelihoods. Unfortunately, for most Asian households, they are unable to do this, as most of these children will struggle with being fixed parents' expectations. Therefore, this may result in their identity to become segregated when they are in their mid-adult.
I agree that students naturally resist new information that challenge their belief. In fact, one of the reasons I believe is because students prefer to stay in their safe zone instead of learning or challenging new things. First, students like to stick with what they already know because it feels safe and comfortable. They feel more confident when they are doing something they are good at. Second, when new or difficult info appear, it can make them feel uncomfortable, stressed, and insecure. To avoid this feeling, they often reject or ignore new ideas that challenge their belief. For example, you can clearly see that these in students who always get high marks in one subject but much lower in other subjects. They avoid to learn the subject that they find difficult because it makes them feel uncomfortable and afraid of failure. That's the reason why I agree with the statement. Thank you.
The students truly resist new information, or they are actually more open to change than we think. I argue that students do not resist new information. In fact, students are currently involved in the stage of life where they are naturally curious and eager to explore the world surrounding them. According to Piaget's theory, students are in the formal operational stage where they begin thinking logically and abstractly. With curiosity, students question their belief and seek new knowledge to understand the world from a different perspective. Surrounded by peers around their age, enhance their willingness to accept the new information, even if it seems different from what they believe. Furthermore, supported by educators who often engage in discussion that challenge students' perspective, teach them to accept new information as an opportunity to develop their cognitive instead of rejecting the outer knowledge as a threat to their belief. Additionally, modern education nowadays often encourages open-mindedness and exposed to the diverse worldview to promote the student critical thinking. Therefore, when they encounter conflicting information, they will see it as a chance to develop and embrace, not something to fear. So no, students don't resist new information. More often, they embrace it.
Students not only have curiosity to learn the new information, they also have a strong need for social connection. Hence, peer pressure can significantly influence student perspective, especially in accepting or rejecting new information. According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, level 3 emphasizes the love and belonging needs, which highlighting the importance of friendship, family, social connection, and the fear of being alone. These needs reflect the motivation to form an interpersonal connection and be part of a social group. For example, where a group of students who share the same belief and encounter to the new information that goes against their belief, they may resist accepting it. However, a student who is open to the new information may be excluded and ignored by the group, as they could be seen as a threat to the group shared belief. As a result, a student will begin to doubt about their viewpoint and feel disconnection during peer discussion. The fear of missing out and losing social acceptance due to peer pressure can lead the student automatically resist new information. In such case, students naturally avoid challenging group opinion in order to maintain social harmony and acceptance. This shows resist new information is a natural human response which is influenced by social dynamic.
There is no doubt that students may resist new information due to peer pressure. However, peer influence can have a positive impact, especially when friends have different perspectives in a diverse environment. Students are more willing to accept new information when surrounded by friends who hold different beliefs and ideas. This is because friends are often seen as more trustworthy and reliable than strangers. Additionally, exposed to a diverse environment helps students to realize that belief can differ widely and there is rarely an absolute right or wrong. Hence, they can recognize that having different viewpoints will not lead to any judgment or threaten their friendships, allowing them to share their thoughts more freely. Exchanging opinions and ideas can stimulate student openness to new information. These supportive environments not only reduce rigid attachment to fixed belief, but also promotes the development of critical thinking skills.
Okay, another reason why students will naturally hold on to their beliefs is because they have been brought up in such a way. What I'm trying to say is that parents have raised their children since at a very young age to hold on to their beliefs, and students will assume that what they are being taught is correct because they think that parents are good people. Next, parents will also strengthen their teachings by saying that beliefs have been conveyed by God. Therefore, students will not go against their beliefs because they assume that they are committing a sin since they are going against their parents and God. Thus, they will also think that bad consequences will happen to them if they were to go against their beliefs. Another thing is, students will also practice this behavior in the external environment, whereby when mixing with friends, they will reject their viewpoints. So, what I am trying to emphasize is that since students have been brought up in such a way, they will naturally hold on to their beliefs. That is all from me. Thank you.
While it is true that students from traditional homes are naturally inclined to their own beliefs, but there are students from open-minded families that are more acceptable to new perspectives. There are parents that encourage healthy disagreements and meaningful discussions with their children, which allows students to openly express their opinions without the fear of being silenced or punished. For example, students who have parents that often talk about current world issues at the dinner table are used to listening and considering different viewpoints rationally. This setting also cultivates students to embrace differences in beliefs. Furthermore, recent studies have also confirmed that open-thinking students have an adaptive learning behavior and are more receptive to new knowledge. Instead of outright rejecting information, students are actually adaptable to new beliefs.
Students resist new information because they haven't fully developed thinking skills to understand it. This is because students, especially in the stage of high school and early college, are still developing abstract and critical thinking skills. Critical thinking is a skill that requires time and constant practicing. It is not something we are born with. In fact, we develop it over time through education and experiences. In result, students at younger ages may lack the cognitive abilities to fully process and comprehend complex ideas. This means that when they encounter new ideas that challenge their established beliefs, they often feel frustrated and confused because their brains are not fully equipped to assess and process these new perspectives effectively. Without the necessary cognitive tools and exposure to diverse perspectives, it is natural for students to resist information that feels unfamiliar or threatens their current understanding. Only through intentional practices and accumulation of experiences can students learn to accept new and challenging ideas with curiosity and openness.
I'm speaking against point 5, the idea that students resist new information because they lack thinking skills. In reality, today's education system actually focuses a lot on helping students develop thinking skills. We're not just memorizing facts anymore. We're engaging in project-based learning, group discussion, and debates. These methods are specifically designed to encourage critical thinking, self-reflection, and the ability to look at issues from different angles. Even though some students are still young and still developing, schools today are actually teaching them how to learn rather than just what to learn. Also, we can't ignore the role of technology and global access to information. With the social media, internet, and various online platforms, students can now access to various worldviews, cultures, and opinions. This makes them more open to change, more adaptable, and more aware that belief can and do evolve over time. And it is actually a sign of intellectual growth, not a weakness. So instead of naturally resisting new information, students are learning to think critically, ask questions, and grow from what they learn.
In summary, resistance isn't simply about stubbornness. It's often the result of psychological and social factors. Whether it's resistance or acceptance, it is still a natural part of learning. By recognizing this, we can create a better learning environment for students. Here's our reference for more information. That's all from us. Thank you.